Jerry Brown here with Jerry Brown Travels.
Lori here.
Well, have you ever wanted to move to another country and save money? Today we're going to have a question and answer period. We have been getting a lot of questions on a video we just made, and I interviewed Steve. Are you able to live on Social Security? Are other expats able to live on that type of an income?
Another great question. That's what a lot of people want to know. And I'm here to tell you, I have a personal budget of about $2,100 a month. I live on $1 to $900 easily. I can bank the difference and put that in the bank.
Now you may be asking, well, how come Steve isn't with me? Well, because Steve is in Cambodia and we're in Thailand right now. So I couldn't get together with him. So I figured this is the best way I can do it, because I really want to get back and answer your questions, because a lot of people are very concerned about it. So if you're really serious about living in another country, go to the description down below and click onto those links and you'll get a great amount of information. Well, thanks. I interviewed Steve in Cambodia, and he talks about the pros and cons of living in the Philippines and Cambodia. And so we got basically 4 or 5 questions repeated over and over. So I thought, for you who are serious about moving out of your comfort zone and moving to another country and following Steve's recommendations, I'm going to do a deep dive, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you videos. In the links down below, you'll see links to these different videos that are going to talk about. We're going to talk about having a virtual mailbox. What is a virtual mailbox?
Virtual mailbox in the U.S., because if you leave, your banks might not let you keep your credit cards if you no longer have the U.S. address. So keep your U.S. address, then come.
Yeah, very good. Now, the virtual mailbox, is it actually a physical address?
It is. Physical address in Houston. And that way, if somebody's looking at that address with a number sign ahead of the box number, it can be, box or number 234. It looks like an apartment number or a suite number. It's still a valid address because it's a physical address. If it says P.O. Box, not going to work.
Virtual mailbox. What is a virtual mailbox? A virtual mailbox is an address that you can have in the United States. You can pick the area you want the mailbox to be in, and this way you keep a U.S. address. Now, why is that important? It's important because if you're collecting Medicare, you have to have a U.S. address to qualify for Medicare. Also, you want to have a U.S. address because the Social Security Department or administration, if they see you have an address outside of the U.S., they send you a letter once a year verifying that you're still alive. You don't want to have that. It's just a hassle. By having a virtual mailbox, that solves that problem. And in the video, it's going to be very specific on way to pick them and what to look for. Also, things that Steve's very knowledgeable in information that he is giving you here, very much in depth. And you're going to really make the transition to come into another country. Your mail. What about things? What do you do about mail and eating mail?
You're asking great questions, Jerry, because very few people cover this on YouTube channels, and that's how do you get mail from the U.S. I have U.S. Global Mail. It's out of Houston, Texas, and it's set up so that I can have any mail I get normally sent to them, whether it's from Amazon.com or my bank or a statement from my trust company. It goes to them. Once I get enough letters or a package, I can look at each one individually, have it scanned, opened and scanned so I can read it. Nope, don't need that, shred it, or yes, send it, and have it sent to me at the post office here in Siem Reap. And it takes about 10 days to get here, but then the courier calls me and says, I have your package. I go to the post office, pick it up, and it cost me maybe $50 to get a lot of letters sent by DHL or FedEx, whatever cheaper way you want to go. Sometimes it can be over $170 if you want a certain carrier to bring it. So I just choose the cheapest way to go, and I ask them to put the tracking number on the outside of the label. So if it ever gets misplaced, they can track it down.
Phones, how important it is to keep your U.S. phone number. And so we're going to look at a video on that and a recommendation that will help you. And the reason why you want to keep it, a lot of times what happens, if you notice, say maybe you're working with your bank or you're working with a brokerage account, and they'll want to send you a code, and you have to put that code in. If you do not have a bank or a phone connected to the United States, there's no way you can get that phone. You still have a phone number that is in the United States. Do you still hold on to a phone number there?
I do, and I got rid of it shortly after I came here because I realized I never use it anymore. I have a local phone number. But then if your bank wants to do something and have you verify that it's you, they want to send you a text number, a text with a code in it. I no longer could get that, so I had to get my phone number back again so I could do that, and then get international calling added to it so I could get those texts and respond back. So I still have one for that reason only.
Yeah, that's a very important part of living in another. Also, we're going to talk about the pros and cons in collecting your Social Security and your Medicare. You don't collect Social Security, right?
I do.
Oh, you do have Social Security?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me ask you about Social Security. What about the Social Security office? They see the address you have is in Texas.
Correct.
Okay, they don't see, okay, so they actually are seeing that you live in Texas, okay?
Correct.
Not living outside of the country. Steve, were you finding it complicated to work with Social Security living outside of the country? How did you take care of that?
No, I didn't. It was no more complicated than dealing with them while I was in the U.S. And the reason for that was my Social Security check is automatically deposited into my Navy Federal Credit Union account in the U.S. And I use my Charles Schwab card because ATM fees are reimbursed at the end of the month. So you have no out-of-pocket expenses for using an ATM card abroad. And as long as I have the U.S. address, they will not send me a proof of life letter every year as they would if I had an HSBC account or a BPI account in the Philippines or an ABA account here and had my money sent here. Then every year they want to send you a letter that you have to print off, sign, and send back. I didn't want to deal with that, so I kept everything as a U.S. presence, and that eliminates Social Security saying, we're going to send you a letter. I've been retired since I was 63. I'm 70 now. So for the last 7 years, they have never once sent me a proof of life letter because I'm living in the U.S. according to my credentials.
Yeah, so that's the thing that you've got to do is you have to do a little side step there, letting Social Security know that you live in the United States, even so you don't. But they, in all of their records, when they're looking at you as, in your case, your domiciles in Texas, and you have a U.S. phone number and like that. So any mail that comes from them goes to your mail service in Texas.
Right.
So that's the way you get around that.
And no one ever asks you, do you live in the U.S.? That question has never come up. They see the address that you register, and that's the end of the story.
If you want to ask more questions, please feel to do that in the comments. Ask questions. I'll get back with you, or Steve will get back with you, and answer those questions. I have a fantastic interview coming up where Bruce lived in the Philippines for 10 years and then moved to another country. He is living on $1,100 a month. To see the full video with Steve, it is in the description, and I posted a link there. Also, we got 38,500 views on in only 5 days. And Steve, what advice would you give to somebody that's just, I call them the seeker. They're looking at retirement, where they're going to be, okay? You mentioned you did a lot of YouTube.
Yeah.
Investigate. But what advice would you give to our listeners there?
Well, the best thing you can do is, of course, as anyone should do, is do your research ahead of time and find out as much as you can from Jerry Brown Travels, from other websites, YouTube videos, and so on, all over the world, and just glean as much information as you can. And then you just need to make an educated guess and step out in faith and realize that nothing you picture up here is going bad is going to be nearly as bad as it actually is.
What advice would you give to somebody that's just, I call them the seeker. they're looking at retirement, where they're going to be. Okay, you mentioned you did a lot of YouTube.
Yeah.
And that's good. But what advice would you give to our listeners there?
Well, the best thing you can do is, of course, as anyone should do, is do your research ahead of time and find out as much as you can from Jerry Brown Travels, from other websites, YouTube videos, and so on, all over the world, and just glean as much information as you can. And then you just need to make an educated guess and step out in faith and realize that nothing you picture up here is going bad is going to be nearly as bad as it actually is when you get there. In fact, 99.9% of the time, I have never had a problem anywhere I've gone. Not in visas, not in living situations, not in personal encounters, but just realize that everything will work out. And take that step, do your research, and make sure that where you go, you can stay because of the visa situation. I hear horror stories about expats who get to a country, find out what it's really like, and then they have to leave, all disappointed.
Yeah. Well, Steve, thank you very much for giving us all this great information of living here in Cambodia. Steve, great. Thank you for the interview.
Thank you, Jerry, for having me.
Okay.
Pleasure meeting all your viewers.
Yeah.